Hi, I'm Tara, and welcome to another Crafting with Curly Cues video. Today I am going to make a very special birthday card for a very special niece of mine. Her name is Sadie, and she loves all things girly, so we're going to make her a beautiful princess card. So I'm going to use this sweet little Halloween set by Unity Stamp Co., and it's got this gorgeous little princess, and I'm going to stamp her up along with the custom sentiment using Milo's ABCs from Lawn Fawn. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp Princess Sadie in some Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and that's because I'm going to be doing some Copic coloring later. So you can see I also stamped her on that little circle. That is some masking paper, so I'm going to cut that out and use it to cover her up while I do my background. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm using my Martha Stewart circle maker guy, I don't know what that's called, to cut a circle out of a piece of Inka Dinka Doo stamping mask paper. And I realized later that I actually used way too much of this paper and I could have saved a whole bunch, but instead apparently I'm using an entire sheet to mask off this circle. So I stamped Princess Sadie on a 120-pound Simon Says Stamp white card base. And that's because my original thought here was that I was going to do a one-layer card. It didn't work out that way, but that was my plan at the beginning. And then I used my circle stamp mask to go ahead and just mask off around her. And then I cut her out of the mask and I'm going to peel the backing off and stick this right on top of that stamped image. And that's going to make it so that little Miss Princess Sadie stays perfectly white while I use my distress inks to create a background behind her. So I've got 3 different shades of pink distress ink here. I've got some picked raspberry, some worn lipstick, and some spun sugar. And I am just using my distress tools to kind of make an ombre circle behind Princess Sadie here. Now, I will tell you guys, I usually like to use my distress inks on watercolor paper, but because I thought this was going to be a one-layer card and I want to use Copics, I stamped it on this normal cardstock, and they still work great. I just feel like I can't get them to blend as beautifully and seamlessly on regular cardstock as I can on watercolor paper. But I did eventually get them to blend in pretty nice, but I had to go over it quite a few times. So now the big reveal, ta-da! There's Princess Sadie, all perfectly white, ready to color there. And I saved that mask on the back of the stamp, and that way I can use it over and over and over again every time I stamp this adorable little princess image. So now I'm going to peel off my background mask, and you'll see, ta-da! A perfect circle. So now into the Copic coloring, and I do have the lids propped up over on the side there so you can see what colors I'm using. For her skin tones, I'm going to start with a really light E00, and I'm just going to saturate the paper by covering her whole face in that tone there. And then I'm going to take my mid-tone and go down under her hairline where there would be some shadows and apply a little bit of that darker color. And then I'm going to take my darkest color and I'm going to go right ahead and put it right underneath her hair. And that is just going to let that shading up there be kind of extra dark. So my R20 is my favorite color for little rosy cheeks, so I gave Princess Sadie some little rosy cheeks, and now I'm just going to go back in the reverse order and take my mid-tone and blend out my dark tone, and then I'm going to take my lightest tone again and just blend out that mid-tone until I've got a nice rosy cheeks with some shading up underneath her hair. So next I'm going to go ahead and get started on her hair. Now, Miss Sadie in real life has some beautiful blonde hair, so we wanted Princess Sadie to have some beautiful blonde hair also. So I'm going to take a few different shades here. I have trouble with blonde hair because there's lots of different kinds of blonde hair out there in the world. There's brown blonde hair, and there's yellow blonde hair, and there's all kinds of different blonde hair. So I wanted Sadie to have some yellowy blonde hair. So I started with this E53, which is kind of just a really neutral, light, super light brown color. And I'm just going to go in and the way that I do hair is I leave the highlight, so the whitest area where you would see the curve. So where her head or her bun kind of has the big curve, that's where the highlight's going to stay. So I leave that white until the very, very end, and that keeps that extra light. So I started with that super light color, and then I came in with some Y18, which is a really yellow, and I flicked out from the darkest shadow points with that color. And then I came in with some E33, which is my darkest shade, and did just some really light flicking from the shadow points. And now when I go back in, and then I'm just going to do just like I did with the skin and do reverse. So I'll go back in with the yellow and flick that back out to kind of blend that darkest color. And then when I come back in with that very lightest, that's when I finally cover up that white highlight, and you can see how it stays lighter than the rest of the hair. So you get that nice realistic looking highlight. Well, as realistic as you can get on a little person that only has eyeballs and no other facial features. But anyway, so for her little dress, I did some pink tones, and I did kind of skip over the main dress part because it's pretty much exactly the same as everything else that I'm doing, where I'm basically just putting down my lightest color and then adding my darker color and then blending back out with my light color. I'm doing a lot of the tip to tip technique with my Copics because I don't have all of the shades in between. So to create that middle color, you go ahead and touch the lighter tip to the darker tip, and it just kind of gives you that nice mid-tone to blend out with. So now that she's all colored, I'm going to go ahead and stamp my custom sentiment, which says, "Happy Birthday, Princess Sadie," right on the front of that card. And I'll be honest with you guys, I was debating if I was going to share, but I'll be honest. The first time I made this card, I forgot the D in birthday, so I got to this point and I stamped it, and I was so excited. And it wasn't spelled right, so I had to start all over. But anyway, that's beside the point. So here's where I realized that I didn't want this to be a one-layer card anymore. So I just busted out my paper trimmer, and I just cut that front panel right off that card base. And I'm just going to use that as the front panel for my card. So I'm kind of figuring out what kind of shape I want. And I did end up doing a square card that is ultimately 4.5 by 4.5, and I kind of did different stages. So little Princess Sadie's panel here is going to end up being 4 inches by 4 inches. And then I took this really pretty mint glittery cardstock and I did it 4.25 by 4.25. And that creates a nice little frame. And then the card base that I made is actually 4.5 by 4.5. So you get a white frame around that. I wanted to show you guys my paper trimmer is getting dull, so it leaves little fuzzy guys on the edges of all my paper cuts. So I just take this really fine grit sandpaper and just kind of rub that right off there, and you can't even tell. So that's a good little trick to have in your back pocket. So now you can see how that front of that card is going to come together here. And then I went really complicated and took this one layer card all the way to like, what the heck? Let's make a pop-up castle on the inside, because every little girl loves a pop-up castle on her birthday. So that pink piece of cardstock there is going to be the inside panel to my card. And what I did is I cut a piece of white Nina cardstock the same width as the panel, and I'm just going to use my Lawn Fawn cloud border dies here and just cut out some clouds to go behind the castle, and I'm going to stick that on the inside. And here is the Critters Ever After. This is one of my favorite stamp sets from Lawn Fawn, and I'm going to use that cute little castle. So these dies are from Mama Elephant, and they create the pop-up feature on the middle of the card so that you can attach your pop-ups. And you just want to use your Post-it tape to line up to the middle dotted line when you run it through your die cut machine. So you can see how when you fold it, those are going to stand up. I went ahead and did 2 because that castle is a larger piece, and I wanted to really make sure that I had something solid to hold on to, but you don't have to do that. So now I'm going to stamp my castle also in some Memento Tuxedo Black ink because I'm going to Copic color this bad boy also. I put that on some Nina 110 pound solar white cardstock. And I'm just going to color that in with my Copic. So I'm starting with a C1, and I'm going to go through some gray tones here. And I have trouble making my grays blend, so this took me a little bit of time to get these grays to blend out on here. And I was actually pretty pleased that they didn't bleed all over the place because I put a lot of ink on this paper. So I am using my C7 here to kind of add a little bit of, I don't know, brickwork, stones. I wanted to make the castle look like it was made out of stone. I'm not very artistically inclined when it comes to the drawing, but I think those look like stones on the front of a castle. Sure, why not? So now you can see I'm definitely using that tip-to-tip technique because that C7 does not want to blend with that C3 very well because they are pretty far apart in the cool gray spectrum there. So I'm just using tip to tip to create that medium tone and blend that color out. And then I'm going to come in with my C1 and do tip to tip with my C3 to continue blending until I get everything nice and smooth and blended. And the end result made my little stones kind of blur, but I think it looks kind of neat. Like they are now blended in with the architecture there. It's a great little element. So anyway, this castle is going to have a pink door. and a pink roof and pink flags because it's Princess Sadie's birthday and everything gets to be pink. So I'm just going to use the same colors that I used for her dress and come in with some R55 and some RV17. That's RV55, excuse me. And lay down my base coat of pink there. And then I'm going to take my darker color and just add a little bit of shadowing. This is super simple Copic coloring. It's not complicated at all. Just 2 colors and then using that tip to tip technique to kind of create the middle tone. I really like the way that the roof turned out with lining all those little lines that are there for the stamp. That's a really good tip with Copics. If you're not sure where to put your shading, just let the stamp do the work for you. These artists that draw these stamps, they're way better at art than I am, and they know where there's supposed to be lines and shading. So if you just use what's already there, then it always ends up looking great. So my last little thing is just to make the lights on in the windows because everybody's home celebrating Princess Sadie's birthday. So now I'm going to cut that out, and I am going to leave a little bit of a white edge so that I can get those flags on there. And now I'm just going to start assembling my card. So first we get to put the puffy clouds on the inside panel background here. So I'm using my Scotch ATG gun to put some adhesive on the back of that, and I'm just going to line that up and pop it right on there. And now I'm going to go ahead and put the inside panel onto my card base. And the key here is that you want to put lots of good adhesive everywhere except for on the back of those pop-up panels. And then when you apply this to the inside of your card base, just line up the 2 creases, squish it down, and then when you pop it up, you can see those are going to pop right up there and provide that spot to glue your pop-up element down. So it's a really cool die. I mean, it makes your card look really super fancy, and you don't really have to do that much extra because the die does it for you. It's pretty awesome. So now I decided that the little castle needed some background. So I'm going to take a few of those little star elements that are in the Critters Ever After stamp set, and I'm just going to decorate that back panel behind the castle there. And now I'm going to assemble the front of my card. So first we're going to take the glitter panel and we're going to go ahead and glue that up and stick it on the front. I did put some extra glue on this because the back of this glitter paper is really slick, and I was kind of worried that it wasn't going to stick very well, but that's all right. I'll just extra glue it and make sure that puppy doesn't go anywhere. So put that down there, and then I'm going to glue Princess Sadie on the front. And same concept, I put lots of extra adhesive because the glitter does not like to hold on to adhesive. So I wanted to make extra sure that this was going to be nice and sticky. This gets to go on a fun little trip in the mail, so wanted to make sure nothing was going to fall off before it got to Sadie for her birthday. So there we go. And the front of the card is pretty much complete. You can see there I got my stickles out. That's going to come later. Some sparkly fun. So stay tuned. So first I took my Sakura glitter pen here and just filled in all those little stars. And now I'm going to take my Signo Uniball white pen and go over the outside of that castle in a couple spots where I did a whoopsies and colored outside the lines. And that's just going to take that away and make it look perfect, like it never happened. I just erased it. I used my Ranger Multimedia Matte to go ahead and adhere this castle to those pieces. I wanted a really strong adhesive to do this so that it didn't pop out, and that is a really strong adhesive. So I'm just going to hold that there for a second, make sure that adhesive takes, and then I'm going to do some little tests because I can't get over how cool this effect is when you use these pop-up dies. I think it's awesome. And I love my castle in the starry clouds with the pink ground. It's just a really neat look. I dig it. So now comes the fun part of sprucing this card up and adding all the glitter, because what little girl's birthday is complete without glitter? And I'm taking some neon flamingo stickles and just putting it over the little over part of her dress and on her little shoes. And then I'm going to add it to her little crown as well. This little image was super fun to spruce up. I love this little image, this little Unity stamp set. These little Unity guys, I forget what they're called, but they have a name, but there's several different stamp sets that feature these little adorable little people with no arms, and they're super, super cute. So you should definitely check that out. I am putting some glossy accents on her little pearl necklace to make it nice and shiny. for when she goes to her birthday ball. And then I'm adding some beautiful iridescent Pretty Pink Posh sequins in the ballerina pink, the strawberry burst, and some 4mm sparkling clear, just to add some pizzazz there. And then I'm going to go ahead and put some of those sequins on the inside of the card as well. And you can see I'm using my micro glue dots to adhere those sequins. That's my favorite way to put sequins in. You don't get your fingers all messy, and they just pop right on there, and they fit behind even the tiny little 4mm. So I always have really good luck with that. So once that is all done with all those sequins on the inside as well, I'm going to very carefully take those stickles once again and apply some of it to the flags on the castle and the handles on the door. And this got a little tricky because the front of the card is wet where the stickles is on Princess Sadie, so I didn't want to smudge that up. So I am very carefully applying my stickles, and then I've got some liquid glass from Close to My Heart. My glossy accents got all clogged up, and I'm just putting that on top of the windows. And you'll see here I grabbed a hair clip to remove some excess. It's just whatever you can find on hand to help you out. I just happen to have a hair clip sitting on my desk, so that's what I got to use. So this card is all done. This is the glorious pop-up and the super cute front. Here is a nice close-up, and then you can see the inside. And I have a special guest here with me. We would like to say to little Miss Princess Sadie, happy birthday, Princess Sadie! So that was my daughter Kennedy. She wanted to come in and say hi to Sadie and wish her a happy birthday. Thank you guys for watching. All the supplies are listed over at my blog. If you like this video, here's another pop-up video featuring some kitties and then just a fun superhero card, because who doesn't love that? Thanks guys. Bye.